Hello, everybody. Welcome to Redgate's Community Circle. We have a number of activities planned over the next couple of months, including classes starting this week. Kendra Little is doing a beginning T-SQL class. Steve Jones has a class on Power BI and DAX. And Grant Fritchie has a class on query tuning, and of course, this class on reporting services. All the classes will be recorded, so you don't have to attend live if that doesn't work out for you, or you can go back to the recordings later if you want to review them again, and you can watch as many or as few as you would like. This class is Introduction to SQL Server Reporting Services. I'm Kathi Kellenberger, and I'm the editor of Simple Talk and also a DevOps advocate at Redgate. And you can find me occasionally, I'm not really a big Twitter fan, you can find me occasionally at Twitter as @Kathi. So this is the agenda for the entire course. It's going to be 7 class periods over 8 weeks because we're going to skip Memorial Day. Today, we're just going to talk about an introduction to reporting services, just what it is and what it looks like, the tools you need to build reporting services report and how to get set up. And you really need a sandbox environment to work in. I have a number of resources for you. Of course, we've got the live class, for example, the one going today through Zoom. In the live class, you'll be able to ask questions during the class in the chat window, and I will answer them as we go or at the end, depending on how the class goes. All of the classes are being recorded. They will be available on Redgate's Community Circle playlist, and I think eventually also on Redgate University. So check YouTube, Redgate Community Circle playlist. I will have assignments and sample projects that are the answers to the assignments out on GitHub. So take a look at that right now. And if I go out to GitHub right now and figure out how to get my mouse to the right monitor, there's the project so far. So, I still have materials misspelled. I will fix that. I have one assignment out there already. And each week I'll have an assignment, and I'll also upload a zip file with the project that matches that assignment. There's also a forum that you can ask additional questions, especially if you're not attending the live session, if you're just watching the videos, and this way people taking the course can chat with each other, and I'll watch that as well and answer questions, and I might throw some questions out there for you as well. No class on Memorial Day. That is a major holiday in the US. I'm not sure what kind of celebrating I'll be doing, but I don't plan on working that day. So this course will stretch out 7 class periods starting today, April 20th. So there's a lot to set up to get an environment that you can use for SSRS. It's kind of complicated. You have to have a SQL Server instance. You have to have reporting services installed to deploy the reports. We won't talk about that piece until the end of the class several weeks from now. You need SQL Server Management Studio or Azure Data Studio. That's so you can write queries and check to make your queries work before you add them to your report. Now, I'm not expecting you to actually be proficient in T-SQL. If you're not, I really recommend that you take a look at Kendra's class. I will each week give you the queries but sometimes you might have to write some of the simple ones. You will need Visual Studio with the SSRS extension. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. And there's a lot that you've got to, and the sample databases, AdventureWorks, Wide World Importers. We might pull in a couple of other ones depending on how creative I feel down the road. But the important thing to note here is this article that walks you through putting all this together. And part of the homework for next week is to get this environment set up. Now, if for some reason you have a SQL Server already installed on your laptop or already available to you, a dev type environment that you can play with, that's fine. Just so you have a SQL Server that you can get to, just so you have these databases, just so that you have the SSRS installed, and just so you have Visual Studio. One caveat is that in order to build reports, as far as I know, and I checked a couple of months ago, you can only build reports if you're running Windows. It is possible nowadays to run SQL Server on Linux or Mac in containers, but you cannot run reporting services or that I know of in a container yet, and you can't really run the SSRS extension in unless you're running Windows at this time. I'm hoping that changes pretty soon, but the redgate.com Simple Talk article has the instructions that you need. Now, you don't really need that in place for today's class. However, if you have it before next week, that would be wonderful. So what in the world is reporting services? So it was started out as an add-on for SQL Server back around 2004. So Microsoft released SQL Server 2000 and didn't come out with a new version until SQL Server 2005. But they were working on reporting services, and in 2003 they had a beta. They may have had it a little before that. I heard about it in late 2003 at Past Summit, and people there were just so excited about it. And I was one of them saying, we need this right now. And the reason that I needed it was that at the job I had, there were these little access databases that had reports built in that linked to SQL Server databases, and all the managers had different copies. They tweaked their own, made their own adjustments, and so then eventually, by the time I was a DBA there, every manager was getting different answers to the same report. So this was a perfect solution to solve that. This way I could find out exactly what those reports were supposed to be doing, get them recreated in reporting services, get it deployed, and then point all the managers to that. And they were ecstatic. It was wonderful. The problem was word got around to some of the other departments, and soon I had so many requests for reports that I ended up teaching a handful of other people in different departments, some of the more tech-savvy people in HR or in accounting, how to build their own reports and get them started. And that kind of was how I got started teaching reporting services. So that was probably like 15 years ago. I was teaching other people how to work with reporting services. It has changed over the years, and I continue to teach this and have even written a book on it a couple of years ago. So as I said, it's been a component of SQL Server since 2004, and it was an actual piece of SQL Server starting in 2005. It came with the media. Unfortunately, I think, because it makes things more complicated, Microsoft now makes it a separate download, even though it is still considered a component of SQL Server. So what SSRS does is deliver what they are now calling paginated reports or pixel perfect reports. Pixel perfect sounds kind of cool. To me, it sounds like a really good thing. However, what that means is there's not so much drag and drop for end users. If you have a report, you have to decide up front what that report is going to do, and end users can't really change things on the fly. So in the meantime, I'm not sure exactly which year, Microsoft started with Power BI. There were a few other things before Power BI. The Power BI is that dashboard type thing, the modern dashboard, where people can go in and kind of drag and drop and build their own dashboards very easily. And so I think maybe in 7 to 10 years, maybe sooner than that, reporting services may not be around, but I know it's around enough in many, many companies right now that it's still a nice skill to have. There's still people using it. Microsoft is still making changes. In fact, in 2019, they made a few updates to reporting services in the last version of SQL Server. So typically, reporting services is going to be hosted in a website. Before 2016, it was called Report Manager. Now it's called Web Portal. So 2016 was really the last time that Microsoft made a lot of big changes to reporting services. So pretty much everything I'm going to show you in this class is going to work with 2016 and up. There are a couple of little things that we'll talk about that are 2019, some of the newer things that they did, but I would say 85 to 90% of what I'm going to do is going to work with SQL, with reporting services 2016 and up. You can also host reporting services in SharePoint or inside like a .NET application. I've never done the .NET application way. I have done the SharePoint way. I feel like it was very, very painful. This seemed like the direction Microsoft was going for a long time. They kind of backed off from that. I believe that now you really don't have as many options with SharePoint. It's still possible. I think they've really gone away from that, which I am kind of glad, because I helped in a couple of engagements that I was on, and it was painful compared to the ease of using the web portal. There's also Power BI integration. So one of the things that they've done in the last couple of versions is they came out with a web portal that will host Power BI reports, and also in Power BI, in the Power BI service, you could host reporting services reports. And now one of the tools that I'll talk about called Report Builder can be used to build reports directly into Power BI. So this is why I'm kind of getting some clues that Microsoft is porting a lot of the functionality that's been in reporting services to Power BI. I think that's the long term. I haven't heard anything really, except we have both of these products and we can continue to invest in both of these products. So stay tuned. Again, I think that there is still a lot of call for reporting services for that skill. I know people that have gotten jobs with that skill. I know organizations, especially in the St. Louis area where I'm from, where they know T-SQL and they know reporting services. That's enough to get a nice paying job. This is kind of how the architecture looks. Let's see. I'm going to see if I can turn this little laser pointer on here. So let's say you're running your laptop at work, and in your intranet you have some links to some reporting services report. So you click the link to request a report, and that request goes to a server, a web server that is running reporting services. So typically in a large environment, the data is not going to be all on the same machine. Now, what I'm going to show you during these demos, everything will be. But typically in the real world, that data will be living somewhere else. So the reporting services service has to take the query that's inside the report and send it to the database server. The database server will send back the data. The reporting services server will build the report, kind of take the report, it's kind of like a template, and then add it together, combine it with that data, and send the report back to the client. Okay, so that's the general way that you'll see it happening. There are some security issues that have to be dealt with. We'll talk a little bit about this the very last class. However, the class will not delve very deeply into security because this class is really meant for beginners, people who want to build reports, not necessarily be the manager or administrator of them. See if I can get to the next slide. Okay, so let's talk, before I go to the next slide, what I want to do is show you my little Sandbox environment, just what we're talking about here. So this is the web portal that was begun in SQL Server 2016. Now it is possible, I'm not going to cover this in this class, but it is possible to completely customize this background. You can have your company name, logo, colors, whatever you do. So this is what it looks like out of the box. Typically, you'll have multiple folders here. You might have multiple folders for different departments or for different projects. In this case, I just have one folder for reports. And there's one report there. When I click on it, I get my answer. This report is not too pretty, but it does give us some information. And this shows off one of the features that I can expand different sections and see the details. And as we go through the class, you will learn how to create the interactive features. Now, I mentioned that it's a pixel perfect report. It's not really a drag and drop interface for users like Power BI is, but you can build in quite a bit of interactivity into the report. I'm going to just check and see, is it possible while I'm presenting to actually see if anyone else is on here. And I'm not able to tell. Nope, okay. So that's what it looks like. You can build in security so that people can only see the folders and reports that they're supposed to see. We don't want everyone in the company being able to see a report on salary, for example, or something on insurance claims. You know, there's a lot of really two ways that you add security. There's two levels of security here. One is at the reporting services level, but then there's another level that you can implement at the SQL Server security level. So it's possible that you could create a report that someone could run, but yet they would not be able to view the report because SQL Server would throw an error. So let's get back to the slides and talk about the tools. This is a really important, whoops. Tools, and I clicked the wrong thing. There we go. There are two main tools that you can use to build reports. One of them is called Report Builder. The other one is a Visual Studio extension. Report Builder, you just launch from Reporting Services, from the web portal itself, and you can build reports. It was really meant for power users, for and also, like I mentioned earlier, it's now being used in Power BI paginated reports. The focus of it is a single report. You really don't have the concept of a project per se. Now, you can save things all in a folder, but you basically are working with that live environment. You can use reusable report parts. For example, let's say you have a list of departments or a list of years or a list of countries, whatever it is that's going to be reused over and over and over. You can make those things report parts that people using Report Builder can just kind of drag and build into their reports. Source control is really important no matter what you're developing. And there really is no source control for Report Builder. You can save the reports locally, save the definitions locally, or you can publish them. If you want to implement any kind of source control, you're going to have to figure it out yourself. Figure out how you're going to do that. So the tool that we are going to focus on in this class is the Visual Studio extension. In Visual Studio 2019, you install it as an extension. In Visual Studio 2017, there is a standalone installer called SSDT that you can use that installs Report Server for you. That is actually the easier way to do it because it's one step instead of a couple of steps. Now, maybe in the future that will not be around. And the article that I showed you a couple slides back really covers that second method. I went out earlier today and made a couple of updates to that article. However, I did not have time to really change it to talk about the 2019 installation. So if you are familiar with Visual Studio and you're running 2019, go ahead and install the extension. If you're brand new to Visual Studio, I would really suggest just doing the SSDT standalone installer. It will be much easier. Obviously, the Visual Studio extension is meant for developers, not power users. And I'm assuming that people who want to be reporting services developers are who are taking this class. So that's where I'm going to focus. And in Visual Studio, we have the concept of projects and solutions. So you can organize everything. Back when I did a lot of reports where I was a DBA, I had different solutions for different projects. For example, there was a hardware project where you're keeping track of what everybody had, and those reports came out. I had all of those. I had those in a project about that project that we were working on. Okay, or theoretically, you could have one project and have every report you ever write. However, that's a little hard to manage. So it's really up to you what you want to do. Really, I'm thinking that you might be able to publish some report parts with Report Builder, but Visual Studio, the add-in there, has some easy ways to publish these report parts, and we will definitely take a look at that. And you can have automated or built-in source control. For example, team system. It's already built in. So let me just show you really quickly. I'm going to jump back over to my VM. If I wanted to use the report builder, what I could do is go to new paginated report. It always comes up with this warning, we're opening, and you can download it. You have to download it, install it the first time. After that, it's available, but they still have that warning that comes up. And this is what it looks like. So the cool thing is that the skills are pretty close to the same. Report Builder has more wizards to it, and it's really expects that you're going to be using those reusable report parts. So I'm just going to grab a blank report really quickly, and you can just see this is the background. One thing I wanted to point out is that it has kind of an office look and feel because it's got the ribbons just like Office. For example, if I wanted to insert a chart, there we go. Inserting a chart, looks a lot like Office. Okay, and then once I am ready to save my report, even I can, and even here, here's that publish your report part, so it does have it there. If I save, the default location to save is to publish, which I feel a little queasy with that, unless I have a special folder where I'm saving things that I'm working on. I might not be ready to push that out to everybody, but you can also save it locally. And let's see, I've got a few more slides here. I'm going to wait on the Visual Studio because I'm going to do a more extensive demo there. Okay, so that's the big difference. I mean, Report Builder is mostly for on-the-fly, ad hoc reports, power users. Visual Studio, it's more about long-term projects, people that are developing for really that's their job, and care about source control. So inside a Visual Studio solution, so that's the biggest container, you have a solution. Inside that solution, you will have one or more projects. So you could have one solution and have 10 different reporting services projects, if that makes sense for you. The way I've got this diagram kind of built out looks like a project I was on several years ago, where I had a data project where if I had to add new tables to the data warehouse, the definitions there were in the data project. The ETL piece of it, export, transport, load, the piece that pulled the data over from the Oracle system to the SQL Server data warehouse was in the SSIS or SQL Server Integration Services project. And then there was also an analysis services project for building cubes. And finally, a reporting services project. So there's, just what I worked with on one project, several years ago. What you do is up to you, but you always have at least one project in your solution. And for this class, you might want to make one solution and have a project for each week, or you might want to have one solution for each week. Whatever you do, just pick a way to do it and stay organized. Okay, so that is actually it for the slides, and I will also post the slides as well out in GitHub. But what I wanted to do was, let's see if there's any other of the links that I wanted to show you. There's the community circle on YouTube. Here's the article on reporting services basics, and also these articles will map to several of the classes that we're doing, so it's also a good resource for you. And here's the GitHub. So right now we just have the week 1 assignment, which is basically setting up your environment if you haven't done so already, and also creating a report with the wizard, which is what I'm going to show you in a few minutes. So I'll get back to my virtual machine. And I'm going to launch Visual Studio. So I went ahead and installed Visual Studio 2019 for the first time just to see if there was anything different. And it does look a little bit different. The initial page looks a little bit different. But here's the report that I was working on. What I'm going to do is to create a new project. So even if you're working with 2017, you'll create a new project to get started. And if you have everything installed correctly, you will start with a reporting services project. And let me just look real close here. Okay, so there's two types. There is a report server project wizard and a report server project. So what's the difference? If you use the report server project wizard, which is what I'm going to do today, and this is the last time I'm going to do it will kick off a wizard that will ask you a series of questions, and then you can answer those questions, and then at the end, you'll have a report. Now, it will not be pretty, but it will be a start. If you use report server project, that will just create what you need to get started with a reporting services project inside a solution, and everything, it's basically blank. You will not have any objects in it. You will have to start from scratch. So for now, I am going to do a report server project wizard and click next. And I have to give the project a name, and notice that there's also a solution name. So solution name is like the big container. So what I could do is say project week 1, but for the solution, I could call that Redgate SSRS class, something like that. So I have one solution, and inside I've got one project, and later I can open that solution and just add more projects to it. I'm going to click create and wait for a little bit. And there's my wizard. I am going to talk until you are sick of it about data sources and data sets next week. So for now, I'm going to just accept the default here, but I'm going to click the edit button and connect to my SQL Server. In my case, I have my SQL Server inside my VM, so I don't have to worry about the server name. I'm just going to call it localhost. It is a named instance called SQL 2019. I'm going to leave it at Windows Authentication, and I'm going to select my database name. Now, I know at this point, if I get a list of databases, I've connected. And here's my VentureWorks 2017 database. I'm going to click OK and click Next. Now, there was a test connection button back there. You're welcome to do that. What I have found is if I've gotten to the point where I can select database, I know I'm good. Here is a query. I'm just going to copy and paste it. And that query is the same one you're going to use for the homework. I'm going to click Next. And here I can pick either a tabular or a matrix report. We will talk about matrix reports in the week about grouping. So for today, we're going to choose tabular. And here is a very important screen. How do I want things grouped? So what I would like is to have a brand new page every time there's a new year. And notice you can see in yellow here how it's kind of lighting up where that field will go. Then I would like it to be grouped by territory name, and I want to include territory ID with that. They are actually together. However, you have to do a little magic, which I'm probably not going to cover today. I'll probably wait until the week on grouping just because it's a little bit confusing. And then I'm going to add in store name, customer ID, and sales. All the rest are details. I'm going to click next. And on this one, I don't think it's very easy to see the difference. You can kind of see in this window a little bit of difference. One big difference is that if you go with the step, you can check this enable drill down box, and both you can select include subtotals. So I'm going to leave it like that and click next, and then I'm going to give it a name, and I'm going to call it sales by territory. Now it's okay to give your reports a user-friendly name, because the name of the report is going to be exactly how it's going to look, unless you change it, when you publish the report. And spaces in the name are fine. Most of the time when you work with objects, you can't have a space in the name. In the report names, it's okay. I'm going to click finish and wait for a few seconds. And I should have, there's Visual Studio. So now I've got a report definition here. I've got properties over here. I have a solution explorer where I can see all the objects. And right now I just have the one object, this report. Okay. Next week we're going to really dig into all the pieces of the reports and some best practices on how you should do things. So there's two modes for viewing a report. There's a design view and a preview. If I look at preview, that's actually going out and pulling the data from the SQL server so I can see what the report looks like. And this looks familiar to that one I showed you because it basically is the same report with some changes that I made. So if I click this next page button at the top, you'll see that I'm going to different years. However, the heading of the report disappeared. And I can click the sections. Notice that it thinks that Canada and 6 are at different grouping levels, even though they really belong together. Again, I'm going to wait until we're talking about grouping because it's kind of a involved topic. It just needs a whole hour to talk about it. And I can enable that. And so here's the store name, the customer ID, and sales. So you can probably see right away some issues with this. For example, maybe I would like to not see 4 decimal places with the money. Maybe I would like the money formatted. Maybe I don't want the customer IDs added up. Why would you do that? So I'm going to go back into design view, and I can do some things. I can click into a cell, and if you're really new to reporting services, it does get a bit tricky doing the clicking. You can click inside the cell. You can select what's in the cell. You can select the cell. So I would say have some practice and click on the edge. Okay. Also notice as I click around that the properties of the text box change. So as I click around, this changes. So let me just go in here, and I'm going to hit delete because I really don't want to add up the customer IDs. Okay. Now I'd like to format the sales. So I'm going to click one of these, and I can go over here and look at formatting, but it doesn't really give me any help. So here's the trick. If for formatting, what I suggest is once you have it selected, hover over, right-click, and go to text box properties. Once you're at text box properties, you can click number, and then whatever type of number it is, in this case currency, I'm going to use 1,000 separator and just keep 2 decimal places. And you'll notice that the format is something I would never be able to figure out myself. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to select this whole column, and you could use the shift key down to select multiple, I think shift or control, maybe it's control. Use the control key to select multiple cells and then paste that format in. So now when I preview the report, it's starting to look better. Okay, starting to look a bit better here. I can do things like, change the font and the color. So what if I wanted that to be, let's see, did I change it to blue? Didn't look like it changed to blue. Let's change that one. Text box 1. I'm going to change it down here. For some reason, it wasn't changing when I selected at the top. So I could change the colors, do whatever I want to do. I want to show you another thing that's really important in preview. Let's say all of these were opened up. I'm going to open up a few of them. If I would go and publish this report, it may look fine. What you really need to be careful of, and I'll bring this up in later sessions as well, you need to go and click this print layout button, because the print layout button will show you exactly how it's going to look if it's saved as PDF or printed. So this is what it's going to look like. So it looks okay, but sometimes the report, like part of the report, will spill over. Let me show you. Let's say we came in here and said we really need a lot of room for the store name. So let's do that. Now, all of a sudden, let me change it back to interactive mode here, and expand, and go back into the print layout. Notice that I'm not seeing all of the information. It's getting split over 3 pages. So you've got to be really careful about that. So one thing you can do is back in design view, you can, if you click your report, make sure your report's selected. And why am I not seeing it up here? There should be a report item up here where you can change. It's under project now, I guess. Let's see. Nope. I hope that's not a bug in 2019. In 2017, I could see a item up here for changing the report properties. So I will find it before next week's class. So don't worry about that. But anyway, you can change the report properties so that it will print on different size paper, print landscape, different margins, etc. And that's what I'll show you. So I'm going to hold off on that for next week after I figure out what's going on here. It turns out that that menu item is not available. Let's see. I'm getting body properties. I right click. I just want report properties. Tablets properties. So I'm not seeing report properties. Unless they've changed it to, nope. Okay, so I will get back to you on that. But anyway, in the 2017 version, there's a menu item at the top when you have the report selected that lets you, play around with the paper and that sort of thing. Let's see, what else do I want to show? I want to show you a little bit about Visual Studio. One of the most important things, if you are not familiar with Visual Studio, is this View menu up here, because occasionally you will lose one of these windows that you need. So always remember to go up to View and look for them. So these windows, you can turn on auto hide. It gives you more room. And then whenever you click them, they can pop out and go back. Okay. Sometimes you might accidentally close the window. Then what? Where did it go? Well, you can go back to View and look for the Solution Explorer. Here it is. And there it is. You can also go up to Window and reset the window layout and click Yes. And that'll pop things back the way they were originally, which is really useful. One thing I'll tell you is that you don't really need the Server Explorer for SSRS. You will use report data over here, and you will use a special reporting services toolbox. Other windows, I'm not seeing it. So that is the correct toolbox. So it just says toolbox. I am going to show you another thing. If I right click in the solution and say add, let me go to the reports. Go to the reports and say add new report. It will kick off the wizard. It always kicks off the wizard if you do that. If that's what you want, that's fine. So if you want a new blank report, and that will be in the homework in the following week, next week, what you'll do is right-click, add new item. And then you have the choice of a report, a data source, or a data set. Now, these are the things we're going to be talking about next week, really all three of those things. And let's see, what else can I show you this week? Another thing, let's close this up. I'm going to say yes to save it. And if I would happen to not be sure how to get it back again, you can click Visual Studio, and it should show you the reports that you've worked on recently. So you can just click on the report and just go right back to it. Now, if for some reason you decide to create one solution and just have separate weeks, that is perfectly fine. So the way you'll do that is right-click on the solution and say add new project. And we're going to say report server project. Click next, and we'll call this one week 2 and create. Okay, so that would get me, I'm all ready for next week now. So the important things to know is get an environment set up. Some of you may have part of the environment already set up. That's fine. If not, follow that document and put it together. There's only one piece that you don't need for the homework. And let me go back to this slide. You really don't have to have SSRS services installed, the second bullet point, until the final week. But you do need all the other pieces to follow along with the class. And again, I'm going to pull up the resources again. The live class will be through Zoom, like today. This will give you a chance to ask me questions live. Watch the video on Redgate's Community Circle playlist. They will be up there within a day. Go to GitHub for assignments and interact with your fellow students or with me out on the special forum. This class is going to run over 8 weeks because we're going to skip Memorial Day. So that's all I have today. I hope that you join me again next week. You can probably tell that I really love this topic. I hope reporting services is around in 10 years from now. I don't know what's going to happen. That's up to Microsoft. But I think a lot of companies are still going to be using it 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So I think there'll be job opportunities or opportunities for advancement for lots of folks. So see you next week. Take care.